it's funny because the most thorough package insert is from Canada. And then the UK is the second most thorough. I do not know if they've changed the United States package inserts. I doubt they have.
That just floors me. I had no idea that the package inserts varied from country or continent to continent. That blows my mind. I thought it's, Zoetis makes something. Here's the drug. Here's the package insert. And this goes in every one. That blows my mind.
Every prescription medication comes with an insert that details potential risks and side effects. The problem is, most pet lovers never see that insert or are even informed of any potential risks before use. Whether you ultimately decide to use these medications, alternatives, or a combination of the two is your choice to make. The goal of this video is not to spread fear, but to educate and empower pet parents so you can ask informed questions and make the best decisions for your own pet.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Judy Morgan. Today, my special guest is Dr. Josie Beug. She earned her veterinary degree from the University of Wisconsin in 1998. While in school, she was president of the student chapter of the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association for 3 years, allowing her to introduce the student body to alternative healing modalities, but also to learn from many of the pioneers of holistic veterinary medicine. Dr. Josie did relief work for 30 plus practices in South Florida area while completing advanced studies at Chi University. And after receiving her acupuncture certification, she started her house call practice in 2001. Josie, welcome. Thank you very much for agreeing to be on today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Judy. It's a pleasure.
I have been kind of crazy out of my mind ever since the isoxazoline products for flea and tick prevention came on the market. And so I've kind of made that my soapbox that I stand on and scream about a lot. And you have a soapbox revolving around a different set of drugs. And, it's funny because I see so much posted in private chat groups and, on social media from you just railing about this new class of drugs. So I think that we need to let people know, because I frankly had no idea that this class of drugs was so problematic until I ran across a page on Facebook saying, does this drug kill dogs? I started reading the side effects. And really interestingly, I took a holistic course in pain management from Chi University. It was a few years ago when I took it, and they were talking about this particular class of drugs. They weren't on the market yet. And it was, being touted as this is going to be so great. So tell us what this class of drugs is, what the name of the drug is. We're going to talk about dogs only for right now. The name of the drug and the side effects that we're seeing, because once it got my eyes opened, which of course, any kind of pharmaceutical that comes down the line, we know they test a very small group, and then the test subjects are our patients. And then we go, OMG, what the... So
they don't do in human medicine, they do stage 3 clinical trials in humans. They don't do that in veterinary medicine. Their stage 3 clinical trials are on our pets. So that's why we see this. So before these, I'm not calling these even drugs, because they're classified as a whole different classification. They're classified by the FDA as biologics, which goes into the same classification as vaccines. Okay, so that's number one. And they came out with these and they really started pushing them hard before they even hit the market. There was a huge marketing campaign. Then when they hit the market, it was going to be the miracle injection for arthritis with no side effects. And I have heard from numerous, both veterinarians I've spoken to, because I've asked them, well, what are you hearing from Zoetis? What are the reps telling you? Oh, there's no side effects. There's absolutely no side effects. It's perfectly safe to give. These are from people walking into their clinic, telling them about the new product. And then I hear the same thing from pet parents. The vet promised me there was no side effects. And that right there just sends up a giant red flag to me, because there isn't a substance on this planet that doesn't have some kind of a side effect. I heard about it. A colleague of mine who is a mentee, she is doing a lot of rehab medicine, and she sent me a message and she said, Dr. Josie, have you heard about Librela? And I'm like, no, what's Librela? She said, well, it's a once a month injection for arthritis. And we're seeing these dogs that couldn't walk before magically stand up and walk from it. And I said, well, how long do you give it? And she said, oh, they're recommending indefinitely. So that was my second red flag, to keep giving this product over and over and over. Just didn't sound right to me. I took a deep dive that weekend and I went to the FDA website and I looked at their approval documents, the Freedom of Information Act approval documents from the FDA. And then I looked at the package insert from Zoetis, and that just lit my eyes up. And I said, there's going to be problems here.
So this is classified, if I'm not mistaken, as a monoclonal antibody?
Antibody. Okay. And that's the first thing. And I think everyone, all of us, for our own medicine and for our pets in the future, they have got a whole slew of monoclonal antibodies coming down the pipeline. I think it's really, really important that veterinarians, that pet parents, that every person knows what a monoclonal antibody is.
So this is the same class as Cytopoint.
Yes.
Which is also a monoclonal antibody for itching.
Yes, that was pretty much the first monoclonal antibody in veterinary medicine. Now, they've been using them in immunotherapy for cancer patients for a long time. And these are the rescue drugs or the immunotherapy drugs that they will try on people who, when all the other chemo stops working. And so there's a bunch of years worth of evidence out there on what these drugs do. There's meta-analysis actually from a lot of pharmaceutical journals and other journals. And they used it as treatment for COVID. So when you hear monoclonal antibody, it sounds almost like a natural thing that you would give for the body, but it's not. It's a genetically engineered large protein that's created using recombinant DNA techniques to go in and specifically bind to different things in the body. So they can design it, like for COVID, they designed it to bind to the virus. For cancer drugs, they designed these monoclonal antibodies to target specific receptors on cancer cells. For Cytopoint, it binds, I forget the name of the molecule it binds to, but it's a very specific part of the immune system. Right. For Librela and Silencia is the cat version and Librela is the dog version. They genetically designed them to bind to something called nerve growth factor. So you have different parts of this. You have the monoclonal antibody, which is a foreign protein you are injecting into the body. Then you have nerve growth factor, and you're binding and making nerve growth factor biologically inactive in the body. And then when the antibody binds to nerve growth factor, you end up with very large antibody antigen complexes circulating throughout the body.
Exactly. So and I'm sure
ding,
that
ding.
I'm sure that nerve growth factor has functions other than weakness and pain associated with arthritis.
Yes. So nerve growth factor was actually, I was a big neurology nerd. I always have been, but I don't remember hearing about nerve growth factor when I was in college. But it was discovered relatively recently in the 1950s. It's a peptide that circulates throughout the body, and they do know, and we know very little about it. We actually know very little about what it does, but it's involved somehow in homeostasis mechanisms. So it is involved in the maintenance, repair, neuroplasticity of the brain in the adult human or animal. It shows up in high concentrations in joints, especially arthritic joints, but we don't know exactly what it does in those arthritic joints. It also shows up in very high concentrations in cardiac tissue, in heart tissue. And then this is the other thing. Even though they swear Librela does not cross a blood-brain barrier, I've been working with messaging back and forth with a board-certified neurologist on this, who did research on brain-dependent nerve growth factor. And he said, there's ways to get across that blood-brain barrier, especially through the pituitary. And the pituitary has large concentrations of nerve growth factor in it.
So, considering some of the side effects, which we will get into, considering some of the side effects that we're seeing with these animals, you have to believe it is affecting the brain, because the side
Yes.
effects are not just being seen in the limbs. The side effects are whole body and a lot of neurologic stuff. So it's got to be affecting
Yeah.
the brain.
It could be affecting the brain, and it could be even affecting the hypothalamic pituitary endocrine axis. So we don't really, and this is the whole thing, you're indiscriminately binding nerve growth factor, and we don't even know what nerve growth factor entirely does and what its function is. So we're getting these global side effects.
Sure.
Now, the other thing is with the monoclonal antibody itself and those big proteins, what do we get when we have large foreign proteins circulating in the bloodstream? We get immune reactions to them. So there are published papers, I actually have a quote from one stating that they have found monoclonal antibodies in and of themselves cause type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4 immune-mediated reactions. They've also found, and this is on the human side, they've found them cause problems in pulmonary tissue, cardiac tissue, liver tissue, musculoskeletal, neurological.
Oh, perfect.
Like pretty much the entire body.
Well, and I read an article not too long ago, I think I still have it on my desk, that there were so many adverse event reports with Librela that the company was losing money, and they went on an all-out advertising blitz about why this is, the be-all, end-all, best thing since sliced bread. Every old pet should be put on these injections. Nothing to see here. That to me, when we have that many adverse events reported, we should sit up and take notice.
Well, there was a group of volunteers, including myself, put together a website called petadvocare.com, and people can go there and find all this information. But a statistician stepped up and put a group of statisticians together because he lost his dog to Librela. And they took it's the Eudrovigilance European Veterinary Database of Suspected Adverse Drug Reaction Results.
And it seems like they're always ahead of us.
They're always ahead of us. And it was released in Europe and the UK before it was released in the United States. Even their package inserts are more thorough. Our package inserts say, we don't know. We don't know what it does if you have a dog with cardiac problems. It even says in there, we don't know what it does if you give it to a dog that has been vaccinated.
Great.
Yeah. So anyway, with this group of statisticians, as of August 13th, there have been 18,648 cases reported. 88% of those cases were reported by veterinarians, not even pet owners.
Which is pretty funny because I've on the veterinary groups online, they're all like, I haven't had any problems. This stuff is great. No problem, no problem, no problem. Which is why they're telling their clients, no problem, no problem, no problem.
Because they were told that by Zoetis, but they are veterinarians. This gets emotional for me because number one, they're not reading the package inserts. They're not doing due diligence. And then they're going to end up being thrown under the bus because the people are walking into vet clinics with your animals who can't walk, who are having seizures, who are in dire straits. And the vets are refusing to say it has anything to do with Librela.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you don't want to be the person responsible for setting that in motion. I get that. But if we're not willing to put the pieces of the puzzle together, then we are not going to be able to save lives. And, there are people who say, oh, this was the last ditch effort for my dog. And you know what? If it's a last ditch effort, if you're standing there at the crossroad of, I'm going to put my dog to sleep. Okay, this is the only thing left available and it works and it gets you another month or another 2 months or another 3 months. That's awesome. But I think that people need to go into that with the awareness of, or it could be the thing that does finally pull the plug.
Yeah.
And this is what I should be watching for. I just, When we go to the human pharmacy, they give you a big handout on all the potential side effects, interactions with other medications. And in veterinary medicine, we go, here you go, here's your drug, no problems, don't worry about anything. And I think that we are really wrong. Tell us about the different side effects. So you're back to your statisticians. We need that.
So there was 18,648 cases reported. Now these are worldwide. 19,500 dogs affected. These are reported, and the statisticians are looking and saying this could only be 1 to 5% of the total cases. Number one,
that's reported. Yes.
And then
we know that only a very small percent get reported.
Yeah. So then there's 2,166%. 11% of those died before the report was even filed. So it resulted in dead dogs. There is a list now of Librela side effects that is in the package insert. It's funny because the most thorough package insert is from Canada. And then the UK is the second most thorough. I do not know if they've changed the United States package inserts. I doubt they have.
That just floors me. I had no idea that the package inserts varied from country or continent to continent. That blows my mind. I thought it's, Zoetis makes something. Here's the drug. Here's the package insert. And this goes in every one. That blows my mind.
Yeah. So the list of that is increased blood urea nitrogen, lethargy, vomiting, anorexia, lameness, cough, UTIs, bacterial skin infections, dermatitis. There's horrible injection site reactions to this stuff. Dermal masses, redness of the skin or mucosal membranes, dermal cysts, pain on injection, urinary incontinence, which is really common.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
And the increased drinking and increased thirst. And I think that may be coming from the pituitary. Histiocytomas, ataxia, lack of coordination, seizures, anaphylactic reactions, pruritus, lack of efficacy, the PUPD, excessive thirst, excessive urine output, diarrhea, and death. Now, this is listed by Zoetis. The statisticians, the top 50 reactions were the increased thirst, increased urination, partial lack of efficacy, lethargy, incontinence, death by euthanasia, vomiting, ataxia, seizures, anorexia. And then the most serious was there were dogs dying within hours of receiving the injection. And then within hours or days, there's a syndrome happening where it progresses from partial or complete paralysis. I've talked to animals where they were doing great running around, and all of a sudden their hind end just is completely paralyzed, like boom.
Right.
And then that progresses to incontinence, seizures, and death. So
a lot of people that I see on social media, they're like, oh, within hours or a day or two, my dog who was mobile is now down, refuses to eat, just peeing everywhere. Literally what they are trying to do is keep their animals alive for at least a month to allow the injection to start to wear off, and hopefully the animal will regain their appetite, will regain some mobility. It's tragic what people are putting themselves through, putting their animals through to try to keep them alive. And some of them, they are managing to keep them alive for that 30 to 40 days for it to kind of wear out of the system.
There is
get them going.
There's a half-life calculator on the Pet Advocare site that people can plug in how many injections they've had and what the half-life of the drug is. But the problem is this isn't just, it's not like a drug that attaches to a receptor and then it wears out of the body and everything's okay. What it's doing is it's initiating these immune-mediated responses. I think a lot of the kidney failure responses is from the antigen antibody complexes lodging in the glomerular. So you get glomerular nephritis of the kidneys. That with those large antibody complexes, it can also trigger things like systemic lupus, other autoimmune conditions. You can have these long-term immune mediated. If the body starts producing antibodies against the Librela, then you're into a whole nother immune mediated cycle of problems.
Right. And that we
So
saw quite a bit with Cytopoint, autoimmune hemolytic
mhm,
anemia,
we're seeing
autoimmune
all of that. Yep.
thrombocytopenia. Yeah. And I don't know if this, I would assume the same thing happens with Librela that happened with Cytopoint, is the first injection might work, the second injection might help. And then by the third one, the body's like, nope, we've made antibodies against that. It's not going to work anymore.
Exactly. I mean, there's some people that have managed to get out like maybe 12, even 15 months, and they're like, oh, but it's wondrous. And then I'm waiting for that next injection where it's going to be the one that triggers the immune system off. You know, it's
right.
so
And
sad.
that sadly is something that we also see. Your dog may not react on the first injection or the second injection, and on the third injection, that might be all she wrote. I want people to understand that just because it helped once, that does not mean you're out of the woods for having an autoimmune reaction or something really bad happening.
Yeah. And we're seeing things like sudden blindness is another thing, and dementia, because obviously the nerve growth factor affects the brain. So we're seeing these dogs that were fine. And I've pretty much specialized in treating geriatric dogs, as I know you have. And when you have a geriatric animal coming from like a TCVM perspective, we know how that body is in balance, but one little thing can push that body out of balance, and it doesn't take a lot. And when they studied these, the 2 field trials that they did on these drugs were on younger dogs with just osteoarthritis. And then the safety trials were on young beagles in laboratories that were like 1 to 3 years old with no comorbidities.
And how many seniors don't have
something
10 comorbidities? I mean, that's so we have to look at how it interacts with everything.
And a big problem is if they have any underlying neurodegenerative problems, if they have a bulging disc, if they have degenerative myelopathy, if they have lumbosacral stenosis or something like that, what we're seeing is the injections, they may not be symptomatic, but then the injection of the Librela uncovers that underlying neurological weakness. And that's where we're getting this sudden paralysis. But how many people are going to go in and get a full MRI or CAT scan done on their animal before they administer Librela?
Sure.
And even that's not, it's everybody knows it's really, really difficult to separate orthopedic problems from neurological problems in a dog.
Right.
And so those are the cases that are getting, heavily damaged from this.
Incredible information. Give us the website one more time.
Okay. It's Pet Advocare, ADVOCARE.com.
Okay, and we'll put that in the show notes for sure. For those of you who have older dogs who might be slowing down, and your veterinarian says, "Oh, we have this new wonder drug injection that we can give your dog. It'll make them want to run across the yard again," which for some of them it does. I'm thinking that we can find more natural ways to do that. We have tons of information for natural treatments for arthritis and slowing down and pain and all these other things. Definitely look into those methods before taking a risk with something that literally could be deadly for your pet. I would recommend download and read those drug inserts, ask for a copy of the drug insert from your veterinarian, and have this conversation. Your veterinarian may not have read that drug insert. Your veterinarian may be going with what the drug rep said, which is no side effects, nothing to see here. It's great, wonderful, best thing ever. Make sure you have that conversation. Make sure you ask, and make sure there's nothing else less risky available for your pet. Josie, thank you so much for your tenacity on this, for doing the research. We really appreciate it, because even though I'm kind of a nut about all these new bigger, better pharmaceuticals that are coming down the road, I don't have time to dive deep.
Yeah.
It is a lot. And so I love it when we have, like for me, the isoxazoline thing just makes me crazy. And for you, the monoclonal antibody thing has just made you crazy, but it's a good crazy, and we really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you so much for helping get the word out on this too. So
no problem. Yeah.